Welcome to today's presentation titled Demo for Success Using Orchid Sample Data. My name is Steve and today I'm joined by Anne and Natalie. Anne and Natalie will be running through how to load and configure the Orchid sample data, and we'll be demoing some of our more popular modules. But first, for those of you who don't know much about Orchid, we have been in business for close on 30 years now, have over 6,000 Sage 300 sites in over 80 countries around the world, and these sites are serviced by over 450 Sage 300 business partners who are actively involved with deploying and supporting Orchid's modules. We're based in Sydney, Australia. We've won a number of industry awards over the years, the latest one being the 2022 Sage Tech Partner ISV of the Year for Australia and New Zealand. And we have over 13 integrated modules for Sage 300, and on average, each site running an Orchid module would actually be running 2 modules. We've enjoyed good consistent growth with Sage 300 over the years, 23% average year-on-year growth, and the current modules and users that we have, so those are modules and users of Sage 300 who are paying an annual subscription or maintenance for the software, has grown steadily over the years as well. As we are talking about demoing, I'd also like to just point out a book that I've found to be very useful over the years called Demonstrating to Win by Robert Riefstahl. Now, the book is quite old at this stage. It was initially published a number of years ago, but the concepts are as relevant today as they were back when it was initially published. And it has some great tips and techniques. It has some ideas which may be new to you, but even if the bulk of it may cover material that you have and may currently be employing in your demos, it's always good to provide some form of confirmation of the techniques that you're using right now in your demonstrations. What I would also suggest is that you consider including the relevant components of Orchid's sales PowerPoint, which you can get off our website. Each module is represented, and we have a concise PowerPoint slide with qualifying questions going through pains that customers or prospects might have around the area that you're talking about, benefits and features of the software or the module that you'd be looking at, along with the screenshot, as you may not need to actually go through the software at all. The screenshot may be sufficient. Now, Orchid's modules fall into 5 different categories. The first category is collaboration, and this includes notes and document management link, and we'll be going through both of those today. Tailoring automation and integration includes Extender Process Scheduler, Remote Action Service, and Workflow Anywhere, and we'll be going through elements of Extender and Process Scheduler. Streamlining financial processes includes EFT Processing, Inter-Entity Trade, and Inter-Entity Transactions, and we'll be running through all 3 of these modules today. And budgeting, reporting, and business intelligence includes Info Explorer, optional tables, data views, and Report Runner. And we'll be focusing on Report Runner today. We could have spent an entire hour going through Info Explorer, but feel that it's probably best handled separately. And one tip there would be that you should endeavor to demonstrate Info Explorer using data that the prospect or customer currently works with. It gives the best feel for what the product can do in terms of data analysis. And lastly, we have operations and inventory management, which includes return material authorizations, bin tracking, and Freight SmartLink. But with that, what I'll do is I'll pass you over to Anne and Natalie.
Thanks, Steve. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to download version 2023 sample data and how you can go about using it for the demos that you need. The sample data and demonstration scripts are available on orchid.systems for all supported versions of Sage 300. Once you log into our website, you select Product Downloads and download the sample data for the versions required. This is a zip file that you will then unzip, and you will have a number of folders. Open up the sample data instructions Word document that you find in the root of C Orchid, and then from there you can refer to the relevant demonstration scripts and companies that are required for the modules that you want to demonstrate. When you log on the Orchid Systems website and then go to the product downloads and select the version that you are needing, so using 2023 as an example, you will find the Orchid sample data. And you can download this file. And viewing these contents, we have all the custom directories, demonstration scripts, help files for you to work with our sample data. So if you extract this to a directory C Orchid, then you will have the structure that we use with the sample data for all the associated files, linked to the various companies used in the demonstration scripts. And once you've extracted these directories, in the sample data folder, you'll find another zip file with the companies that we use for our sample scripts. So you can go ahead and extract this data and then load those companies. If you don't want to create all the companies, you can refer to this document, Orchid, Instructions for Sample Data and Folders, and you'll find that in the C Orchid directory that you've just unzipped. And in this document, it'll point you to the demonstration scripts and which companies are used for which of the modules for demonstration purposes. For example, EFT Processing, you would use Orc Ltd. Having a quick look at those folders that you've unzipped, in the custom directories, we have the files necessary for the demo data for Report Runner. In custom documents, we have all the documents and folders needed for you to demonstrate Document Management Link. Custom Reports has the saved reports from Report Runner, the financial Report Runner. Demonstration Scripts has a Word document describing the steps that you should take for each of the modules if you want to demonstrate it. EFT Files has some created EFT files for you to demonstrate with. EFT Payroll Payslips has some saved payslips per company if you want to demonstrate the ability to save the payslips. Freight Smart Link has the import and export folders necessary for communication with Smart Freight. Process Scheduler Files has some sample files so that your Process Scheduler logs has some history. Sample data we've already seen has our sample data zipped up, and then when you extract it, you've got all the companies that you can then load, and the instructions on how to use Orchid sample data. We've had a quick look how to get started with the version 2023 sample data. Now let's look at some of the individual modules, starting with Notes and Document Management Link.
Thanks, Anne. So while Notes and Document Management Link can run independently, they're both part of the Information Manager suite and both use a tray to display information and documents on the side of Sage 300 screens. This is why we often demonstrate both modules together in the sample data, and this is what we're going to look at today. So assuming you've installed the latest Info Manager product update, loaded the data, you create your 30-day trial code or enter your NFR code. Once you've done that, there's a few things that are specific to Notes and Document Management Link before you can start using the demonstration script. And in particular, if you're not using admin to log on to your Sage 300 database, you want to check that the user is flagged as a Document Management Link user. You also want to check that the user has got user security to view the notes roles. And you want to have a look at the Orchid documents, custom documents folder. So we're going to look at that, and then we'll go through our standard demo of DML, and that caters for a lot of the common scenarios that people ask to see AP invoices and AP documents around vendor activity. We can also open the documents and add new documents. And in Notes, we're switching to other modules. We're looking at notes around AR Customer, IC Item, and adding instruction to the screens. So we're going to start with Notes and Document Management demo script. And as you can see, this is configured in the Orc LTD database, which we typically choose that sage green color for. Once we are logged into Sage 300, key things we need to do is make sure that that little tray, and if you're not seeing it in your tray, you may need to drag it from here. And if you check the tray options, that you are flagged as a DML user. And if you want to demonstrate SharePoint, you would put in your details there, although we have not configured any demo data with SharePoint. And then, as mentioned, we have some documents that are in this custom documents folder, in the Orchid folder. And they're all around the different modules that DML can be configured against. So typically we always show AP because a lot of people want to use Document Management Link for AP vendor and AP vendor invoices documents. So we have created a whole lot of folders there for many of the vendors in sample data, because the Orc LTD database is based on SAM LTD Sage 300 sample data. Now we're ready to look at Document Management Link and Notes around AP transactions. We've got a batch here called DML invoice batch, and it's got some documents configured around the invoices that have been put in there. If you look at the first invoice for vendor 1200, I can see I've got a note for vendor 1200. I've got an individual invoice document here, so I can double click on it, open it, and see the document. And then below I have a box with all the documents that relates to vendor 1200, including some PDF, some Word document, and even some email messages. So I can double click and open the message. Little tip, if you want to demonstrate linking email messages, make sure Outlook is installed on your machine. If I look at the next invoice here for vendor 1200, I don't have any note. I have a document for this transaction 003, and I have a list of documents for vendor 1400. I can add a document to this invoice or to a new invoice that I'm creating, and a pointer there is to, if you've done it before, and pointing to the C Orchid custom documents scan documents folder, there's a series of documents that you can then attach to your transactions. So let's put this, and as you can see, it automatically renames the document based on the document number you've entered. And if I click explore, I can see that the file is now here in my vendor folder. So with Document Management Link, that is really the main thing you do. You display your documents and you open them. Now I can look at my vendor activity screen, And if I select the same vendor, 1200, I can see again my note and my documents. I can demonstrate how to edit the note if I want to. And if I go to the transaction screen and start navigating through these transactions, I can see that the second box is filtering by the document in the grid. So with just this little example, which caters for many people requirements, I'm demonstrating a lot of the features of Notes and Document Management Link. And if you focus more specifically on notes now and look at, for example, AR Customer, I've got two types of notes here. I've got what we call an instruction note. So this blue note telling me what the territory code have to be will show whether there is a customer or not, whether there is a note for that customer. It will always show whenever I'm opening the AR Customer screen. So you can put in your procedures. You can also see you have different fonts. And if we go back to a customer that has a note, I can see this note in here. Similarly, if I go to inventory control and look at some items, you can see some example notes that we have entered against the item. The notes is a free text, can be as long as you want, so this is useful for when people want to store long description for master files like IC item. You can include some hyperlinks, and you can have different color background depending on what you're trying to show. So without entering any data, just using the Orchid documents and sample data, you can demonstrate a lot of features in there. And then if we're putting together these notes against customer and item in a Sage 300 screen that uses both customer and item being the order entry screen, I can see our typical demo data around order entry includes some notes for the customer, the documents for these customers, and then documents relating to the item. So here, if I change item, you may see that that label NQA document box actually changes. Some items don't have a note, don't have a document for this item. So in addition, in the demo data, we also have configured what we call extended notes. So there are notes that run an extended script. You can see that here and there where we're showing sales history by customer and by item. You can demonstrate this as part of your Notes and Document Management Link demonstration, or you can do this as part of an extended demonstration, or if you want to, you can hide those configured notes, so you can remove some of the things that have been configured in the sample data, but we find that often it's easier than actually adding new one. So in particular, if somebody wants to see quickly what sort of things you can do, this really demonstrates the range of features of both modules. We've looked at how to use sample data for Notes and Document Management Link. You can use it in combination with Extender to create notes when a field changes, and also to configure notes to run Extender script on the fly. So hopefully that gives you a good idea as to what to do with Orchid sample data for Notes and Document Management Link. Now let's look at Process Scheduler and Report Runner. We have separate demo scripts for Process Scheduler and Report Runner, but those modules are often sold together. So we will do a combined presentation of the sample data and the demo scripts for both of these modules. Before you start, for Process Scheduler, you have to resave the credentials, the user credentials in Process Scheduler options and in Process Scheduler companies. We also often send emails for Process Scheduler, so you want to check that you can send a test emails and put in your email credentials. To be able to show the emails, you have to change the recipient's email address to an email that you have access to. And while we have configured all the folders in the Orchid sample data, We haven't actually populated any history files to keep the sample data as small as possible. So we suggest that you run a few schedules, in particular for data integrity checks. For a report runner, we find that the visual process flows are pretty useful, so you might want to assign that to your admin user or whichever user you're looking at, and you can show the process and the different functionality of report runner with that. An important part of using the sample data to demonstrate report runner is to set the customization directory. And again, if you are going to email reports in the demo, you want to make sure that Info Manager is configured to email and that you have access to the email address that is used. There are two components to Report Runner. One is to automate the running of GL financial reports, and the other one is to automate the Crystal reports, whether standard Sage reports or custom Crystal reports. You may present both in the demo or only one, depending on what your client is after. But in this case, we're going to mainly look at Report Runner for Crystal report. Let's look at Process Scheduler demo script. Process Scheduler is configured in Orc Ltd, the green database, but runs schedule across the other three databases, Orc IN2, 3, and 4. So before you start, what you need to do is go into Process Scheduler Setup, under Options here, the Processing tab, resave that password, and check your email configuration. Then in Companies, for all the databases that you're going to run a schedule, save the passwords. For Report Runner, in the options, check the email in there, and then on the Report Runner, we've configured in this database to save the reports into the C Orchid custom directories. So you need to open your Sage 300 customization directories and make sure that it is set to the same. Process Scheduler is designed to run unattended. So to demonstrate it, we typically use the schedules in the Orc Ltd database and run them. The ones that are typically often demonstrated is to do a database dump, because this one is configured to run across those 4 companies. Similarly, with the day end, running the day end across 4 companies and posting the system batches, it's something that typically you would run one of these in a live demo and discuss all the other ones. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time just wait. With data integrity, it's important to point out this little tip that you can send an email only if there has been a change. So highlighting the fact that you can manage by exception very successfully with a Process Scheduler. We generally don't demonstrate using Windows Task Scheduler to run this schedule, because this is more part of training than part of demonstrating what the product can do. So we said we're going to demonstrate Process Scheduler and Report Runner together, and we have two schedules that have been configured. One is to run your financial reports, and then the next one is to run your Info Manager reports. So again, they're all configured in the sample data, so you can come here, click, and refresh all your reports. Having a look at Report Runner for Crystal reports, on the analytical reports, I've got the ones that have been configured in the sample data. So you can add your own sections like this, like accounts payable reports, accounts receivable reports, inventory control, etc. So if you want to demonstrate your own, you click Add a section. And then within that, you can add your own report. But let's first look at what we have included in the sample data. And that includes some standard Sage reports, like the AP account sets, bad control, and vendor aging. So we can run it, and as we can see, we've scheduled it for different parameters. So if I go Edit, you can see that a whole lot of the parameters that this report typically requests have been hidden, and the user input that we need is to enter the aging that people want to run. Now in this one, if I look at edit, it's the same report, but it's been configured a little bit differently when I'm just asking the user to confirm the vendor groups that they want to run it for. But I've hidden the parameters to the aging parameters to 0, 30, 60, 90 so that they don't have to think about it. It's always going to be the parameters that they should be using to run this report. Change this, but if I go print, I'm only prompted to select that, and if I say print, it's running the aging report for these vendor groups from ASC to SVC. But if I run it from here, it's going to go only from INT code to SVC. So different vendor groups, but same aging parameters. Having a look at a sales history, I can look at schedule and see that this report has been configured to be run every day. And when it runs, it saves the report in the custom directories or CLTD saved reports, etc. I can also configure it to send an email. An interesting element of Report Runner is the security options. So you can add security to all the reports. Either as you're adding the report or after the event, you can select a security group that belongs to the report. And those security groups match your security setting in administrative services. So if I don't select anything, all users can run the report, or I can say that only users in security group A can actually run the OE sales history report. With Financial Report Runner, we'll let you look at the demo scripts and the various demonstration videos that are on the Orchid website for more details on that. And then you can also use Process Scheduler Level 3 to automate the distribution of the financial reports. You can print to a printer or save to a folder and or email, so there are different configuration options for Report Runner. And a reminder that Process Scheduler is particularly useful for exception management and also to automate tasks across multiple Sage 300 databases. There are 3 levels for Process Schedulers. They're all cumulative. So that's an overview of how to use the Orchid sample data for Process Scheduler and Report Runner. Many of you are familiar with Extender. In this presentation, we're going to focus on Extender Configurator, which lets you tailor Sage 300 without coding. It includes alerts, logging, emailing, and workflow. But the focus today is on using the sample data, so we will skip all the introduction on what Extender Configurator actually is. Before you start using the sample data, have a look at the Extender inquiries logs to see what is already there. Check that you can send a test email in Extender options. Set the user's email addresses to emails you have access to if you're trying to demonstrate emailing. So in this demonstration, we're going to focus on creating alerts, logging, notes, and emailing in using Extender Configurator and primarily looking at AR Customer. There is a more detailed demonstration on the Orchid website. Extender Configurator for logging and alerts is configured in Orc Ltd again. Extender Workflow, which we will look at separately, is in the Orc EWF database. The table of content in that document is pretty useful to see the kind of things that is in the sample data. Look here at an AR customer. I'm going to change the credit limit. So it's warning us that an email has been sent. I can use the hotkey, backtick tab, to show the logging, the old value, the new value. By default, it's 1 month behind. If I change the filter, you can see it's changed a couple of times last year and then again this year. At the same time, I can see that Extender has actually created a note dated today, indicating the change that was done and by which user. And that same note we can view against other screen. So if we look back at our demo script there, see that a similar setup can take place against other records in Sage 300. And to do that, we can check here in View Event Scripts and Workflow what we have configured in this database. So we have configured against an AR customer changes against a credit limit field that we're going to log. We're going to send an email and we're going to create a note. We're also going to log when the on-hold field changes. So we've done it here against AR invoices, when the date of the invoice changes, the business date changes, when the comment on a vendor changes. So you get the idea. You configure which fields you want to log or send an email when it changes or create a note. And then on the inquiries log, you can see all the changes that have happened in your database. You can also see which users have logged in and when. So with the Extender Configurator, you can log, send emails, create notes, trigger some processes when a field changes in Sage 300. Once it's configured, it runs in the background. It works when using the Sage 300 desktop or the web screens. It's an important point to highlight in a demonstration. It can apply to any Sage 300 view. You can log multiple fields on a single view, like on hold and the AR customer. And then if a user is a document management link user or a workflow user, they can also use little icons on the screen rather than use backtick tab to view the logs on the screens where they've taken place. Now, a reminder that Extender Developer, which many of you will know as the ability to write Python scripts to validate, automate, and generally tailor Sage 300 to your requirements, also includes the Extender Configurator functionality. So we're not going to go through the Extender Developer sample data as of today, but this is some of the functionality that it includes in the Orc Ltd database. Some example scripts to validate fields, to set default values, some buttons on screens. Now, Extender Configurator also includes the workflow functionality. So we're going to continue on with Extender and the workflow. Again, before you start, you need to be able to send an email. Set your user's email address to an email address that you have access to. You need to make sure that your Sage 300 users are workflow users, and you do that in the Extender license screen. You can add users to the workflow user groups, because many of the workflow in the sample data actually are assigned to user groups, not specific Sage 300 users. You can familiarize yourself with the templates using the workflow demo script and using the actual nodes that we've added next to the workflow templates. The Extender Workflow demo script is very long and includes detailed description of about 10 examples of workflow templates across a range of Sage 300 views and screens. So typically you wouldn't go through it from A to Z. You would select a few workflow templates that are relevant to your prospect. So I said 10 was actually now 13. So starting with a simple alert when an AP option changes, to approving GL accounts, approving AP vendors, approving AP invoice batch, AP payment batch, AR customer credit limit approval, AR customer on hold approval, 2 options of approving sales orders, approval of purchase requisition and approval of purchase orders, as well as approval of projects in project and job costing. So there are a few examples. So in this presentation, we're going to focus on using the workflow console to show the range of workflow available. Then we will just demonstrate in a little bit more detail 2 or 3 workflows. And then we will look at the workflow logs. We've loaded Orc EWF, which is a light blue database. Need to check in my options that I can send a test email. Then I would go into Sage Admin Services users and check that the users have a valid email address that I have access to. In my license screen, I want to make sure that the users I'm going to use for the demonstration actually are inserted in here as a workflow user. And if I'm demoing Workflow Anywhere, I would say that they are a Workflow Anywhere user as well for the mobile app. Then here under user groups, I can add the users, the say 200 users that I want into these user groups. And the demo script will highlight where these groups, in which templates these groups are used. The name should be a little bit self-explanatory, like accounts for anything to do with AR, as well as AR approver, finance manager for the larger amount approvals, purchase managers for PO and requisition, etc. Select which templates you want to work on. So if we look at our GL workflow approval here, you see because we've got Information Manager installed in this database, we can actually see a note that describes what is happening in this template. So for this presentation, we're going to demonstrate the GL account and the purchase requisition, and we're going to focus on the workflow console. The workflow console, when I'm logged in as admin, I can view everything that's currently pending. So these are all the approvals that are pending in the sample data. So if you're doing just a quick demonstration and you want to highlight the different things you can do using Extended Workflow, you can just focus on the console and not necessarily enter too many new transactions. I can see here that I've got a purchase order waiting for approval. And from here, I can drill down to the purchase order screen to view more detail, or I could drill down to the AP vendor activity to see what is going on with this vendor. I can also look at the history to see what has happened with this purchase order before. It was started by Anne, it was approved by Demo, the manager, and that's why it's now waiting for the next step of the approval. If I click on values, I can see some more detail. I can see some comments that have been entered by the first manager who approved. Okay to purchase now for the new product launch. I can also then click approve to approve my purchase order. And you can see this purchase order has now dropped off the console. It has been approved. We'll receive an email separately. And if I look at my workflow log, I will see the last thing that has happened here, which is it's been approved by the controller. And if I want to see more detail about just what has happened to this purchase requisition, I can filter on this PO 79, and now I have the whole history of the approval for PO 79. This was using the console. Now if I go back to my demo script and let's say I want to demonstrate approving a new GL account, I can go to the GL account approval workflow description in the demo script and follow the key steps in there. This workflow demonstrates separation of duties where the approver must not be the same person who created the account. Create a new GL account. So the account has been made inactive until approved. I can come to the console and refresh. You can see my record has been here. It's assigned to accounts and it's started by admin. If I try and approve here, it will say that the GL account cannot be approved by the user who entered the account, which is exactly the point I'm trying to demonstrate. I can now log in as a user in the accounts group and demonstrate that they can approve from there. But because we're focusing here not on doing a full-blown demo, but just showing you what is in the sample data, I'm not actually going to do this step today. So this demonstration was to give you some ideas as to what is in the Orchid EWF workflow database, sample database, and how you can use it to tailor your extended workflow presentation to what your clients and prospects actually need. The best starting point is to map the process to clarify the steps that you want to demonstrate. You can have different approvers based on the amount or the transaction type. In some cases, a question arises as do I need extended developer with the workflow? don't need the workflow. Everything we've shown you so far is using the extender configurator. And again, you can contact us if you want clarity on that for a specific scenario. If you want to demonstrate approving outside of Sage 300, we have two options. One is using Workflow Anywhere, the mobile app. If you're trying to demonstrate remote action service, you would need to get your NFR token from us and configure it in the sample data. We have configured a few templates like the AP payment batch and the purchase requisition and purchase order approval have an option to use remote action service. The workflow works with third party, and we have examples of workflow working with EFT Processing and RMA in the Orchid EWF database. We've looked at using Orchid sample data for 2023 for the collaboration modules, for the tailoring, automating and integration modules. Now let's move on to streamlining financial processes, and I'm going to hand over to Anne to go through EFT processing, inter-entity transactions and inter-entity trade.
In this next section, I'm going to run through how to use our sample data and demonstration scripts for an inter-entity transactions demonstration. Before you start, you should review the demonstration script for inter-entity transactions as it covers multiple scenarios. And then match up those scenarios to your client's requirements and only demonstrate the functionality that they want to see. And the contents of the inter-entity transactions demo script shows you the 7 different scenarios as well as what to do before you start. And these 7 scenarios really relate to the demonstration that you're going to do. You can demonstrate the automation of loan account entries using GL accounts to choose the target company, or using optional fields to select the target company. You can use GL triggers to reallocate the loan accounts to AP and AR, and inter-entity trade to mirror the transaction in the target database to use the subledgers instead of loan accounts for the account balances. And we have cash management between companies, bank transfers, applying receipts and payments to invoices in Company 1 using Company 2's bank account, or transferring invoices, AP or AR, from Company 1 to Company 2 for consolidated receipting and payment. But the typical demonstration is the automation of loan account entries using GL accounts to select the target company and bank transfers. And those are the 2 I'm going to do now. Assuming you have already loaded the sample companies, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that in all the relevant companies for inter-entity transactions, in both inter-entity database mappings and trade organization setups, that you've gone and set the correct user ID and password that inter-entity transactions is going to use in order to create transactions. For the loan account automation using GL accounts, we're first going to enter an AP invoice for vendor 7,900, use the distribution code to spread it over entities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can simplify the entry if you want a smaller batch to post in the GL. Then post the batch, open it up in GL, and post the batch. And here you can show the IY entries that are automated. First the IY entries, then the reversal entries for those transactions to be sent to target databases. Then have a look at the IY audit to see the batch numbers created in the target databases. And then log into ORCINC 2 and ORCINC 3 to show the batches that were created. And for the bank transfers, we're going to go into Orc Limited and do a bank transfer from bank account CCB to E2 CCB. And when the bank transfer is posted, Inter-Entity Transactions Cash Management creates a bank entry in Orc Ltd to zero out the E2 CCB, and then does a bank entry in ORCINC 2 to show that deposit in that company. And the IET Cash Management Audit Trail will show the transactions that are created. And then you can show the deposit in Orchid 2 into the CCB bank account. So I hope that gives you a feel on how you can use the demonstration scripts in conjunction with the sample data to demonstrate the 7 different scenarios that we have in the inter-entity transactions demonstration script. And for a more detailed demonstration on all the different scenarios in inter-entity transactions, please go to our website, select inter-entity transactions from the Sage 300 add-on menus, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the inter-entity transactions demonstration video. Assuming we have now installed the latest updates of Orchid's modules and loaded the relevant sample data, we are ready to demonstrate inter-entity trade with minimal configuration. Before you start, there's a few things to check. You should review the demonstration script for inter-entity trade, as it covers multiple scenarios. Then review the client's requirements and demonstrate only those scenarios that the client needs or wants to see. The scenarios that we have to demonstrate are APAR trade, this is mirrored transactions across companies, OEPO trade, so this is mirrored transactions across companies, but you can chain the documents. APAR bidirectional trade, meaning you can do some of the documents in company 1 and other documents in company 2. OEPO bidirectional trade, meaning you can create and amend the documents in either of the companies and the amendments will flow through to the target documents. And we also have a scenario demonstrating the intercompany settlements. Before you start, you should check the user ID and password for all IET transactions in all companies that you're going to be demonstrating in, and this is in the trade organization setup. And in this example, I'm going to do OEPO trade, document chaining. We are going to demonstrate the scenario where we enter a sales order for our customer for goods that we don't have in stock, and we need to order those goods in from our sister company, Orchid 2. In Orc Limited, we enter the sales order for our customer, 1200. And using the ship via to account configuration in inter-entity transactions, those items that we wish to order from our sister company, we use the configured ship via E2 to create a purchase order for these items. So in our case, the first 2 items, the fluorescent desk lamp and the bulbs, will be ordered from Orchid 2, and the third item, the halogen desk light, will not be ordered from company 2. When we go ahead and post this sales order, inter-entity transactions will create a purchase order in company 1 to order these 2 items from company 2 and a sales order in company 2. And we can get those document numbers from the inter-entity transactions audit trail. So sales order 99 created purchase order 48 in the source company, and purchase order 48 created sales order 99 in the target company. So looking first at the purchase order, we can see the PO was created for the first 2 items from sales order 99. And in company 2, we see the sales order 88 for those 2 items. And if we were to go ahead and ship all and invoice and post this document, we will see shipment 81 was created, which in turn created receipt 100. And receipt 100 in turn created shipment 79 in Orc Limited to ship those items to Ronald Black. And then invoice 79 was created in Orchid 2 and applied to the PO, and the customer was invoiced as well by invoice number 79. And again, all those document numbers are in the associated audit trails. Shipment 81 in Orchid 2 created receipt 100, and in turn receipt 100 created shipment 81 to Ronald Black. And invoice 79 was applied to the PO receipt and to the shipment to Ronald Black. And opening up the original PO, we can see receipt 100 has been applied to that PO. And opening up the original sales order to Ronald Black, you can see that shipment 81 and invoice 79 has been generated for that particular order. And that concludes the demonstration of the OEPO trade with document chaining. For a more detailed demonstration on the other scenarios in OEPO trade and APAR trade, go to our website, and on the inter-entity trade page, scroll down and you'll find demonstration videos there. Assuming we have now installed the latest PU of EFT Processing and loaded the relevant sample data, Orc Ltd or Orchid 2, depending on the payroll that you want to demonstrate with, we are ready to demonstrate EFT Processing. Before you start, you should review the demonstration script for EFT Processing to see the different functionality that is covered by the demonstration script, and review your client's requirements and demonstrate only the required functionality. Using the EFT demonstration scripts, you can demonstrate AP vendor payments and customer refunds, AR direct debits and automating the AR receipt creation. You can demonstrate EFT payments to employees using US payroll or Canadian payroll, as well as emailing the pay stubs, T4s and Releve 1s. And before starting your demonstration, you should check the user security group assignments if you want to show the following features: the two-step separation of duties for approving vendor and customer bank account details, obfuscation of the vendor's and customer's bank account details and who can see the full bank account details and who just sees the obfuscated number, and the ability to recreate an EFT file. And in this demonstration, I'm going to concentrate on AP vendor payments and on the security setup to show the different features within EFT processing with regards to security. Having a look at the EFT processing demonstration script, we see that the company we should be working in is Orc Limited. And I have assigned my user Anne to an appropriate security group to demonstrate these features. The easiest way to demonstrate EFT is using the EFT Processing AP and AR visual process flow. And from there, I'm going to demonstrate setting up an EFT vendor, creating an EFT file, printing the advices, and having a look at the audit logs that are created. Logging into Orc Limited as Anne, who has the ability to enter bank account details, but not the ability to approve bank account details, we can demonstrate the separation of duties around the approval of bank account details. Using the EFT APAR visual process flow, we can see the major steps in the setup and the running of EFT processing. First, I'm going to look at the EFT vendors. Because we have elected to obfuscate the bank account details for vendors and customers, the obfuscated number with just the last 4 digits showing. And as a user does not have access to the status of EFT vendors. So in this security setup, Anne can go ahead and create new vendor details. So I can add the record, but I can't change the status. And it's only an active EFT vendors record that can be included in an EFT file. So my manager would need to log in. My manager doesn't have the ability to amend bank account details, but they can only change the status. So we have a two-step separation of duties on the EFT vendors, the EFT customers, and on the bank account. And any changes that are made are logged in the audit log. So we can filter to which object we want to look at, or date and time, or to the user, and we can see these last few updates. Adam's done a lot of updates. Then Anne changed vendor 1200's bank account details from 44 to 45, and then Anne inserted the CTAC bank account details. And as you can see, it's obfuscated in the audit trail too and on all reports. It's only in the EFT file, and for those users who can view the full bank account details by the security group that see the full routing number or bank branch number and bank account number. And then for the EFT processing, you would be posting your AP payments or posting your AR receipts or AR refunds, and then going ahead and creating the EFT file. Selecting batch number 5, we can go ahead and create the EFT file. And we can open the file from here and then upload to the bank. And go ahead and print our remittance advice. Depending whether we choose customer or vendor or print destination, the email remittance advices would go to the customer. And Anne, as a security setting, cannot change the format of the remittance advice. There's also a security setting that only some users can recreate an EFT file, and Anne does not have that ability. So when I click Create, it says this EFT file has already been created. Only those users who can recreate EFT files could select Create Again on a batch. And that gives you a quick demonstration of some of the features in EFT processing for AP vendors. Please go to our website, select EFT Processing from the Sage add-on menu, scroll down on the web page, and you will find other demonstrations for other features in EFT processing.